This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very interesting edition of The Express. And before I go very far and introduce my wonderful guest for tonight, Gina Charles, I want to say thank you to my producer and who runs this whole operation, Mr. EW. EW, we're on the air 6 years together, according to what I heard today. This is our anniversary.
Oh, today is the actual anniversary?
Yeah, today's the actual anniversary.
I did not know that.
Well, I didn't either until I start getting all these congratulation things on LinkedIn, and I went, what? You know, has it been that long, really? And then I remembered, yeah, we started 6 years ago doing this crazy thing on Tuesday nights, to which Stella's probably still mad at me about.
Yeah,
And congratulations to you and Stella, 25 years of wonderful marriage.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you both deserve a tall one on that.
Yeah, like I said, already got the tall one. 6'2".
Anyway, it's been 6 years. Let's hope for another wonderful 6 more. And let's get into tonight's program. And let's. Oh, wait a minute. We got to do the backpack thing. Send that message to me, and I'll incorporate that at some point too.
Okay.
Gina Charles. She was raised in Long Island, New York, as you will tell in just a couple of minutes. Gina's experienced lucid dreams as a child and developed an early interest in spirituality. Alongside apparel design and graphic arts career, she has maintained an inward journey. Gina is the author of 2 wonderful books, Shift Happens and Fuel for Your Life, of the authentic. She also does Authentic Living blog, for those of you that are interested in this, and the founder of NewWorldAppear.com. Gina continues to write about authentic living and spiritual awakening. She is probably one of the nicest people you're ever going to meet in your life. She does all of this with wit and practicality, offering authentic living as an alternative to way to have the human adventure. And she's also a human rights person, because just the other day, according to Facebook, Miss Gina, there you were saving a bunny rabbit. So I will get my Easter eggs this year for Easter. And but without further ado, welcome everybody to The Express. Gary Allen with you, and my guest is Miss Gina Charles. Gina, welcome to the program.
Hey, Gary, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, absolutely. And as I said, I there you were on Facebook holding a bunny rabbit. Did it really almost drown in your pool?
It really did. But before we get into that, I just want to say happy anniversary to you.
Oh,
and your
thank
show.
you. Thank you. It was unexpected. It was unexpected. I didn't even remember. I've been doing this for so long with EW. Neither one of us had any clue.
Yeah, well, that's a long time, 6 years.
Yeah, that's another 3, and that'll be my marriage. And then after that, everything else is gone. Before we get into this, TMV Cafe Radio Backpack Drive has just begun. $40 fills a backpack with everything included. The backpacks will go to kids starting their first grade. Spread the word and go to tmvcafe.com and donate today. Those children need to be sent off to first grade in style. Education is extremely important. If you don't believe me, just take a look around at what's going on. Gina, I read both of the books. As you know, you and I have talked a great deal about your life, and we're going to get into where people can get these books. They're wonderful books. Shift Happens, A Layman's Person, A Guide to Awakening, and Fuel for Your Life, a 4-point practice to spiritual awakening. And one book really opens the door, and the second book, which we will get to in the second half of the program, talks a little further about the awakening. But first, I want to talk about you, so my listeners can get an idea about you. Talk about you. Were you always a person of faith?
Well, I did grow up in Long Island, like you mentioned, and I do come from a Catholic family. We weren't diehard Catholics, but we were Catholic, and I did make all my sacraments in the church. And like you mentioned, I did experience lucid dreaming as a child, and I never spoke about it because I really didn't have the vocabulary to explain it at the time, and didn't really even understand it until I was maybe in my 20s. But I think that's what really sparked an early interest in spirituality. And I did go back to church on my own when I was about 16. And I remember sitting in the pew waiting for all my inner bells and whistles to go off. And I didn't know what I was looking for, but I felt a very strong pull towards knowing that what was behind the curtain, that there is something much greater going on here, and that it was, I think, part of our collective purpose to find out what that is. And then not too long after that, I was lucky enough to get myself into the Fashion Institute of Technology, because really that's all I ever wanted to do was be an apparel designer. And I went there, and after college, I moved to Miami, and I really loved every minute of my career.
Now, wait. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. You never told me that you lived in Miami.
I didn't. Well, I did. I lived in Miami for a little over a decade.
You know, I lived in South Florida. I lived in Hollywood because my dad was based with Eastern Airlines, who I worked for a while too, in Miami. I mean, I know Miami inside out. I was just down there this past Christmas. Where'd you live down there?
In Miami Springs, right near the airport.
Oh, that's right. Right, the villas. That's where what we used to call, folks, that was right by the airport, and that's where all the training facilities were for the pilots and flight attendants for Eastern and Pan Am and a number of other airlines, national airlines, and they used to call it the Stew Villas, the Stewardess Villas. And I had some friends. I had a real good friend of mine, Henry DeGraff, who lived down in Miami Springs. I don't know whatever happened to Henry. I think he became an airline pilot. But no, I didn't. Either you told it to me or I completely forgot. But it seems like you and I have lived in a lot of the same places. Although, I'll tell you, I never lived in Brooklyn. You know what I mean?
You never did? Oh,
No. No, you know what I mean? You know, I had a friend of mine from Sheepshead Bay. I had some friends from Rego Park who I served with in the military and stuff. But I never, I visited New York. I've been to New York more times than I care to remember, especially Manhattan. But, boy, that's cool. Did you confide in anybody when you were young about your lucid dreams and thoughts?
No, not at all. It's not just that I didn't have the vocabulary. In my little mind at the time, I really didn't think that it would be well accepted anyway, even if I could explain it. So I never said anything. But it wasn't until probably my early 20s when I was looking for books to read, and I just felt a strong pull to learn more, and I really didn't know what I was looking for, and I didn't know where to look. And after I moved to Miami, it still was with me. So I had gone to college, I had come out, I moved to Miami, I started a new life, and this thing was always underneath all of that. And I was lucky enough to find this woman, Amelia DePazos, and she was in Fort Lauderdale. And one day I was pulled to go to this little gift shop, like a bookstore. They had books and crystals and all that. And because I was being pulled to do it, it resonated deeply with me. I thought I was going to find something wonderful there. And I really didn't. So I left kind of disappointed, and on the way out, I grabbed some flyers and I went home. And it turns out that my first spiritual teacher, in terms of getting all my inner bells and whistles to go off, was this woman on this flyer. And I contacted her, and she introduced me to, energies and spirit guides and all kinds of things that really just, I think, expanded my perspectives. And this felt right to me. And so there I was now on my spiritual journey, as they say. And I have always had this behind the rest of my life, my design career and family and all of that. So it's always been there.
Do you think that this spiritual journey that you're on has also enabled your creativeness as far as your companies are concerned, with your designing and everything? Do you think that one has impacted the other?
Yes, I do think that spirituality and creativity go hand in hand. So while the thinking mind can be creative and it can be clever, we don't get works of art, let's say, or things that really move people. To me, that is a channeling of consciousness. And when I look back over my life, even as a child, my favorite place to be is, and still today, is to be seated with a nice sharp pencil in front of a blank piece of paper. And I understand why that is now, because you get artists, and there's all different kinds of art, whether what you're doing is an art. Some people draw, some people paint, some people dance. That saying, being in the zone, there's a space there where that thought moves to the side. And here now you're in this wordless place of creation, and it's the most delicious place to be. So yeah, that's probably the reason why I've always done creative things without really realizing what it was I was really doing. I was quieting the thinking mind, and I was kind of tapping into that wordless place where there's infinite possibility. So yeah, creativity is a great part of it.
Gary Allen here with you on The Express. Gina Charles, my guest, the author of two wonderful books, Shift Happens and Fuel Your Life. It's about two books about authentic living and how you find authentic living as an alternative to have the human adventure, which we will slowly but surely get into. How did you come to write this book, Shift Happens, A Layperson's Guide to Awakening?
I never saw that coming, believe it or not. And it was like midlife. And like I said, I was very happily an apparel designer. And I never thought that I would do anything else. But eventually what happened was I moved back to New York after a little over a decade in Miami. And it actually took me several years to really get real with myself and be truthful that deep down inside I really didn't want to design anymore. And I did not know what to do with that because I didn't see that coming. And I didn't know what to do with myself. So there I worked on surrendering, and it wasn't until I surrendered to that truth that my life then just took another turn. And my love of spirituality and art kind of married, and I started New World Apparel. And I started to write. And my mind said, why are you writing? You're not a writer. You're not supposed to be writing. But that was the practice at that time, to try to redirect myself and find a new direction when I never thought I would be having to look for one in the first place. And that was it. It was the practice of surrender. And I had to surrender to what I was resonating with. And that is what brought me to start writing a book. And the first one it flowed very, very easily. And then I did some illustrations and put them in the book. So it all magically melded together, even though I never saw any of it coming.
Well, I must tell you, it's a very easy read. It's a wonderful read. It is an awakening. We're going to get to what awakening means. But you said something interesting that I hadn't thought about. But when it comes to any kind of spirituality, and I'm a deep man of faith, but my spirituality kind of runs into the fact I was born Jewish. I'm Christian by choice, but yet I'm a student of Kabbalah, as well as I'm a student of Native American spirituality. I've always been drawn to that. Matter of fact, my art collection is nothing but Native American stuff. Always has been. Thank you, Kevin Costner, for costing me all this money. He's the one that introduced me to a lot of this stuff. But you said an interesting word, surrender. Talk about that in the concept of awakening. And do a lot of people that you find who are still searching for who and what they are, even at my age of 65, they're not willing to surrender. They're afraid to surrender and give in to something that maybe is beneficial to them, or the awakening of who they are?
Well, I think with social media and memes and all that, everyone has seen that saying. I believe it's Rumi, that everything you ever wanted is on the other side of fear. So yes, fear. If you know what it is that you want to do and you're not doing it, fear must have something to do with it. But there's also that other side of that coin, and sometimes you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. And there you have to follow the signposts of life. And what disconnects us from that is simply unnoticed, unquestioned thought. And generally, we're running the same old programs and patterns that don't serve us anymore. And then we wonder why we can't change our lives or change direction or make things better. Or if we do that, we go round circle and have to start all over again, that the good is only temporary. And what is the difference between being able to step out of that into a life that flows easily and effortlessly with stuff that you actually want to do every day? Again, it is unnoticed, unmonitored thinking. And this is where authentic living comes in. It's to notice that that's the state of being that we're in and to be able to step out of it.
And it's very difficult for people to take that leap of faith, because I still find myself doing the same kind of the little silly things in my personal life that I probably did 20 or 30 years ago. Bad habits, I kind of refer to it as. But how does that all work into awakening and the good news as you lay out for us here on Shift Happens in your first book? Gina Charles here with us on The Express, Gary Allen, your host. How does that all work into your awakening, and what is your awakening?
My definition of spiritual awakening is the epiphany of the difference between self and thought. So it's an experience more than it is an understanding or an analytical understanding of words. So while we understand the concept that thought and self might be two separate things, it's really more of an experience. It's what I call going beyond the words. So the first step is to understand the concept that thought, even though it's happening in our own head, and who we really are two separate things. This becomes the duality of the human condition. Are we more associated to unnoticed, unquestioned thinking, or are we the witness to it? And when we can differentiate those two spaces, we are now aware of the duality of the human condition, and this is free choice. Now we can make some real changes in our life. Otherwise, we keep running around in the same unnoticed thinking. And like you said, you keep repeating some of the same things, and you're starting to notice it. Bless you.
No, it's cold.
So that's it. That's the crux of my message, is that the human condition is actually two states of being. And authentic living is very similar to mindfulness. Everyone's using that keyword now, mindfulness. And it's wonderful because it's present moment awareness. And that's what authentic living is. It's noticing thought, changing from negative thought to positive thought. And I mean, that's all good. But while we notice thought and we're able to change from negative to positive thought, it's all still thought. It's like apples and oranges is all still fruit, right? I'm pointing at, and authentic living focuses on that there's thought and no thought. There's two states of being. So what's really happening in our lives underneath the people, places, and things is really this journey back to self, this journey back to this realization. And it's not to imply that our purpose is to serve and embellish our mind-made identity, but it infers that the real you, it lies just outside of that mind-made identity. So who are we really outside of our descriptions and beliefs?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ultimate question. Who are you really outside of? That's where all your potential is. So authentic living is waking up to seeing this duality in the human adventure. It is to go from surviving to thriving. And when you think about it, authentic living really is the ultimate success, because it's discovering that where true authentic happiness comes from, which is it's in your back pocket. And we spend our whole lives searching and scratching outside of ourselves for something that we already have.
You talk about in your book, Shift Happens, on page 31, and I do recommend it. Everybody, please go and get this book. It's wonderful. You also talk on page 30, which will lead into 31, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Then you say over here on the next page, having difficult life experiences are directly linked to believing untrue thoughts. Talk about, we're talking to Gina Charles, author of Shift Happens, Gary Allen with you here on The Express. Talk about true and untrue thoughts, and what your description of them are?
Okay, so thought is really the focus here. And true and untrue thoughts. Why is it so important in our lives? And because our brains learn by repetition. So when we repeat something, it becomes memorized within the electrical synapses of the brain. And this is where we form our patterns and programs, just like a computer. And that's why rote behavior is so easy. It's like being on autopilot. Mm-hmm. And some of the memorized behavior that we have, it sometimes automatically fires by itself, when triggered. And those are the things that we call addictions. So, for example, after repeated practice, I can type real easy and effortlessly now because it's become hardwired in my brain. But along with activity, behavior can be memorized as well. So while my mind can learn how to type or dance, it can also learn self-sabotage, defensiveness, fear, and unnoticed thought produces the emotion and behavior that create the limiting patterns in which we live. So when I have and I believe thought without noticing it, I am the puppet, and unsupervised thought is the puppeteer. So, listen to these statistics. According to researchers, which includes the National Science Foundation, it's estimated that we're actually having between 50,000 and 70,000 thoughts per day. That's roughly 2,000 to 2,900 thoughts per hour, or 35 to 49 thoughts per minute. And how many of those roughly 60,000 thoughts in your day are absolutely true? How many of them are helpful or inspiring or debilitating and self-sabotaging? Are we rerunning old thoughts and beliefs that no longer serve us? And how much of that thought is really inessential to our survival? So really, when I don't notice thought, it controls me. Imagine that. It controls me because I don't notice it. The mind thinks, and I believe it without question, all day long, every day. And granted, some unmonitored thought might make me feel good, but on the other side of that coin, some of it might make me want to hide under the bed, which means that developing the ability to notice thought is one of our superpowers.
Is there No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, is there a breakdown? Is there a breakdown of what thoughts are the ones that consume us the most?
The ones that you believe.
No, but what I mean is, in that survey, was there a do you think more about work? Do you think more about playtime? Do you think more about your husband, your wife?
No. It's just a statistic about how many thoughts we have. And of course, depending on what filters we're looking at our lives through, it will depend, that will depend. And also our self-worth, that will also dictate the type of thought we're having. But it seems as if the type of thought is important. It's never really the what, it's always about the how. So in other words, if I'm having thought, if thought's popping into my head, but I'm not really noticing it, I'm just believing it as it happens, now I'm the puppet, and unsupervised thought is the puppeteer. Because one moment I might have a happy thought, and the next moment I might not. And now I'm being dragged face down in my life through thought that I didn't grab and hold at arm's length and say, wait a minute, if I just look at this one thought, in reality, I really don't even have any way of knowing if this is true or not. We don't do that. We weren't taught that. We haven't developed that muscle. So we're having thought, but we're not witnessing it. So what's more important than what am I thinking about? It's how am I thinking? Am I witnessing thought as I'm having it, or am I just being had by thought? So the content of the thought is not as important as if how you're doing it. Because once you start to develop that muscle of being the eyewitness to thought, you're going to start to be awake to it. You're going to start to wake up to why all of a sudden you feel good, and then in the next minute you don't feel good anymore. You're going to notice where that came from. Oh, well, this thing just popped into my head. It just popped. We get so lost, like we were thrown into white water and washed away with thinking. Right? It's really about noticing it or not, as opposed to, and there it is. It changes our whole lives. Like, I'll give you an example how unnoticed and unquestioned thought can create turbulence in our lives. If deep down inside of myself, I held a belief that I don't deserve an easy and enjoyable life, the moment that I recognize an easy and enjoyable experience in my life, thought is going to slide in and sabotage it. And the thinking mind is going to douse it in untruths, and it will create the experience of its painful belief. So we're really running the same programs and expecting different results. We're focused on the what and not the how.
You're right. Gary Allen here with The Express. We're talking to Gina Charles. She is the author of Shift Happens, a Layman's Person Guide to Awakening and Fuel Your Life, a 4-point practice to spiritual awakening. You can get them on Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble, Kaboo, One Books and One iTunes, books and iTunes, or go to GinaCharles.com and you can find the books. And I do highly recommend these books to you. I've enjoyed them a great deal, and I plan on continuing to read once after this program is over with. You were talking about, your conscious or unconscious thought. Do you think the mind plays tricks on us sometimes? I brought this up many times to some of my friends that I have dreams that are just way out there. My dreams consist of people. I'm interviewing someone like Abraham Lincoln, and I'm also interviewing FDR. Okay. Those two would never have any reason to be together because, number one, they lived, 100 years apart. It didn't live 100 years apart, but let's just say that, one was dead long before the other one was born. And I have crazy dreams like that. I even have dreams about massive funerals sometimes, or something along those lines. Is your mind, as you go through the day, playing tricks on you anyway, or is it out there, your mind having an exercise of releasing some of its tension? Could that be some of the true and untrue that you're talking about?
The thinking mind is just doing what it was made to do, really. It's not that it's out to get us, and it's very hard not to take it personally when we realize that the mind's priority is not what's in our highest good. It certainly seems like you could take that personally. But like I say, the eyes blink, the heart beats, the lungs respire, and the mind thinks. That's what it does. And the mind has two priorities. One is to perpetuate that mental activity, and the other one is to polish its own identity. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not personal. It's just what the mind does. For putting all of our focus, because like I say, our focus is our magic wand. So if we put all of our focus on thought, we fall asleep in thought. We're now below thought. We're unconscious. We are now being guided by unmonitored thinking. That's like leaving a 2-year-old in a room alone. Everything could be okay for a while, but pretty soon the Cheerios are going to hit the fan. It's very almost dangerous. So it's not really about the context. It's really about how we're doing it when we wake up in the moment. And that's really the $1 million question. If we're asleep in thought, how do you wake yourself up? So as far as dreams go, as far as I've read, you could look for the symbols, like who does JFK and Lincoln represent to you? There you might get some clues. Maybe your higher self is trying to send you a message. And yes, I do agree with you. I think that sometimes it's just a rehashing of all the happenings of the day and all the unnoticed thinking that we might have had during the day. And then they come out in these crazy dreams at night sometimes.
Yeah. We're going to switch gears now, and we're going to go over and talk about your book, Fuel Your Life, a 4-point practice to spiritual awakening. It's your latest book. It's a wonderful book. I've had an opportunity to read it, and I really have gotten a lot out of it. Talk about some of the things that I know are very, very important to you as far as this book is concerned. And I have here that aha moment, and you also say in here something to the effect of, you talk about authentic living and how important realization is, and we're going to get to that. We also talk about the dreams part, about living your life of dreams, and understanding it, and learning how to live it to its fullest, and to live the authentic living, and for your everyday life. Talk about that as far as your life of your dreams and the dreams of your life.
Sure. I mean, our mind has an idea sometimes of what we think our ideal life is, and we do chase those dreams. Sometimes they intertwine with things that we picked up from other people, like our parents' expectations. And sometimes we actually achieve something. I had a girlfriend that, she was in FIT with us, and one of her parents were a doctor. The other one was a lawyer. And all of a sudden, midstream, they said, look, we really don't want you to be a creative. We'll pay for college, but you have to be a doctor or a lawyer. So she dropped out of FIT and she went to law school. And, I give her a lot of credit, because for somebody that this did not resonate with, she made it through. She actually became a lawyer. And I caught up with her some years later, and she shared with me that the 10 years she spent as a lawyer was not just grueling and horrifying and terrible for her, but she feels like she lost those 10 years of her life. Really? And she on her own then went back into a creative lifestyle. Yeah. So that's part of this, is to be able to determine, is it my head that's trying to lead me, or is it my heart? Am I being guided to where I'm supposed to go, or am I just doing something that my mind thinks that I should do? And authentic living is a way that you can work around that and really start to resonate with the signposts of your life. And then you start to notice little things happening, little coincidences, little miracles, things that just fall into your lap unexpectedly. And those are signs, confirmations that you're walking in the right direction. And it's, again, that word surrender. It's learning how to notice the thought that's pushing you in the direction of reasoning, as opposed to what you're resonating with. And Fuel Your Life, that book specifically is the how-to, right? Shift Happens gives you the overview of who we are, where we are, and how this place works. But Fuel Your Life really gives you a how to do it. And FUEL itself is an acronym, and it stands for Flow Emotion, Practice Unconditional Acceptance, Be the Eyewitness to Thought, and to Step into Lucidity. And this really came from, over time, I've always worked on self-growth, and like I mentioned, I've always had spiritual practices in the background of my everyday life. And over time, I noticed that these practices evolved into this 4-point foundational practice. And they had become the precursor to powerful realizations in my life. And these realizations, they've not only offered a way out of pain and suffering for myself, but they've also offered this clarity of a new way to have this human adventure. I mean, I know I just said a mouthful when I said that I can step out of pain and suffering, and that means everybody can do that. When we are able to look at a circumstance in our life and see through the filters of our history, our beliefs, our mind-made identity, our fears, when those filters begin to fall away, we experience conscious expansion, we experience realization, truth rising from within, and pain and suffering fall away magically. It just falls away. You see through this situation to the truth, and pain and suffering fall away. And this is a practice in your everyday life, and this can change your whole life experience.
And I think that's probably when you start living your life instead of a dream world that maybe you thought was going to be your life, when you finally wake up and realize what it is that I really want to do in life instead of what everybody else wants me to do. And my generation, your generation, grew up with parents and colleagues and everything that just said, no, you're good over here doing this, and no, that's not really where I want. My mother wanted me to be a doctor. What Jewish mother doesn't want their Jewish kid to be a doctor or a lawyer, But it wasn't for me. And I was accepted to medical school. I went to the University of Miami
Wow.
Medical School, and I lasted a semester and a couple. I think I told you the story. I had a couple of friends of mine who finished medical school there, did their internship, did their residency, and I ran into them about 6 or 7 years after that point, and they had quit. And they opened up landscaping businesses all through South Florida. And while they said they're not millionaires like they might have been with being a doctor, they were a lot happier. But they became doctors because that's what their mom was, or their father was, or their uncle was, and that's the way they went. And
Right.
but they were much happier and less ulcers, I guess, or less addiction, to find out who they were.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that what we're all just trying to be happy.
Yeah,
That's all we really want to do. And granted, we are brainwashed or programmed to want to appease or please other people. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but we first have to learn how to navigate and come from a place of authenticity. And there's no reason why we all can't find a way to do something that resonates with us and what we love. I mean, I think we all have the right to do that. And
Right.
we do live in a society that, we are kind of the wheel turners. We are programmed to get up every day and get a job, whether we like it or not. And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with that. I'm just saying there is another way to have this human adventure.
Yeah, absolutely,
There-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Gary Allen here with you on The Express. Gina Charles, my guest, the author of Shift Happens and Fuel for Your Life, author of the Authentic Living blog as well, and founder of New World Apparel. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. You talk about the aha moment. Is that when the light bulb goes on in your brain and you go, aha, that's what's going on over here. That's oh wow, I've been thinking this way and it really should be that way.
Yeah, an aha moment is exactly that. It's when the light bulb goes off in your head, and I kind of have a theory about that. It's like a light bulb, or like the rug being pulled out from under you. It's like all different types of right. It depends on what the realization is for you, but an aha moment is really a realization, and a realization is basically an understanding versus a knowing. Right? There's thought. You understand things analytically, but realization is a visceral knowing. It's more like an innate or an intrinsic knowing. So there's thought and reasoning versus a wordless, spontaneous knowing. So we could reason ourselves to death. Oh, I'm going to be a doctor because these are all these reasons, and all these reasons are good. But it is not until I quiet my thinking mind and listen and tap into higher intelligence that I invite a wordless, spontaneous knowing that rises independently from within. I mean, haven't you ever had one of those experiences where you just know something for sure? It just resonates with your insides, right? Haven't you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I've a couple times in my life. I can't say that I'm, as I said to you the other day, I'm a bulb on the Christmas tree, but I'm not one of the brightest, that's for sure. But yeah, I've had moments where everything just kind of fit. I knew what was going on. I did, and I didn't even prepare for it. It just seemed like it just came natural. And
Right.
I think that's the clarity was there, and I think that's an important word too, clarity. Question that kind of popped into my head: how much do you think social media plays with a distraction for people not to delve into who they are, to kind of
Right.
take things as they come nowadays? I mean, to me, social media has destroyed the gift of conversation, and a lack of it. We're more prone to get on our social media devices and do stuff. But do you find it that also hampers awakening and finding the untrue or the true in your life?
Well, social media, like everything else in our lives, this is the place of duality. So there's two ways to do everything. So social media, there's two ways to do it. If we do social media awake and aware, we're fine. So now technology is a tool. It's wonderful. Now, for the rest of us that spend a lot of time in unconsciousness or sleepwalking or being completely focused on thought without questioning it, it could be a slippery slope. Realization is recognizing that we are not our stories, there or, changed or otherwise. Social media, it's kind of built around polishing the self-made identity. We have profile pictures, we have descriptions, we have pages, we put pictures of our lives up. And it's enjoyable and it's all good. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, there's two ways to do everything. So I think this is the reason why, we have tragedy out there. There are some young people out there that have actually taken their lives from being bullied online, from not being as popular as they think they should be. How many likes do you have? In that case, it's a dangerous circumstance because we're totally focused on the mind-made identity and polishing the story of ourselves. And that's the illusion. That's not what we are, and that's not who we are. So, yes, social media, I think, can be dangerous and damaging when it's done in that way, in that unconscious way, when we are completely associated to thought as opposed to being able to witness thought at the same time it's happening. Because then we don't have the ability to weed our own gardens, and pretty soon it takes us over.
Yeah. I've literally sat at a restaurant and watched a couple sitting at the same table, and they're texting each other, and they're just sitting across from each other, or they're texting other people. And I think if you really have to be at dinner with somebody and you're texting someone else, what are you doing there with this person, whether it's your wife or daughter or whomever? Go and be with that person. If taking up the time to be together is destroying that, then you need to be wherever that other person is. In your book, you talk about thought. You say thought is the limitation, or the limitation within which I have the human experience. Talk about that.
So this place of duality where we are is really a space of infinite possibility. And the only thing that cuts us off from that unlimited possibility is to corral ourselves off in unnoticed, unquestioned thinking. So when I formulate a belief, I have now corralled myself off, and my space is only within that belief. I have cut myself off, closed the gate to infinite possibility. So I shouldn't wonder why I can't change something in my life. I'm cut off. It's when I am able to take the beliefs that I have and question them. And one of the ways that I do that is with this one very powerful question: what else is also true? This one question has helped me see through pain and suffering to where the pain and suffering falls away. So you question it one after the next. So thought and belief, when we're not noticing it, it is not just the puppeteer, but it corrals us off from our limitless. It makes us limited when really, in essence, you are limitless. And the reason we can't get airborne sometime in our own lives is because what we don't question and allow to move forward, like emotion, we drag it behind us. So many of us are dragging all this stuff that we never looked at, we never questioned, that doesn't work for us. We're rehashing all these old programs because we just don't notice them. It's almost unfair to think that's the difference. It's just that we just don't notice it. It's like asking a fish, how's the water? He'll look at you like, what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what it is, because we are submerged in thought all the time. From the time we're babies and we get programmed or taught that my name is such and such, I am this, I am that, that's where the learning begins. This is what then cuts us off from, now other cultures, might not cut us off from it. They might teach you also that you're something greater than unnoticed thought. But in my experience and in my lifetime, that wasn't part of my culture. We were taught what was expected of us and what we were supposed to be doing. And again, it's not bad if that's all you have, but there is something much greater.
You talk about in your book on page 40, awakening is the process of becoming yourself, not creating yourself. So in other words, you don't have to create anything. You just have to take the realization of who you are and what you are within inside yourself, and you're on your way.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, my thinking mind, I noticed, is likes to control a lot of stuff in my life. And when I realized this, and that's the beauty of this practice, what you start to notice is not what's wrong with the next door neighbor, or, what so-and-so did wrong to you. It's not about that. It's about cleaning your own backyard. It's about noticing what's in your own lap. It's about noticing what's happening in your own frontal lobe. It really doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. And we really believe it does. Well, didn't you see what so-and-so did to me? It starts here. Even what you were talking about before with the social media. If sometimes we are disconnected from other people, it's really because we're disconnected from ourselves. So we always have to come back to the control panel, and the control panel is within us.
We're talking to Gina Charles. She's the author of Fuel Your Life, a 4-point practice to spiritual awakening. You can get the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kubu, One Books and One iTunes, and GinaCharles.com. I highly recommend this book as well as Shift Happens. It's an excellent book. Both of them are wonderful, wonderful books. Let's kind of skip over and go to part 2 of this, although I did want to get into me, myself, and I. But let's, because we got about 15 minutes left, let's talk a little bit about fuel, and we'll go through it word by word. The F part of it means flow emotions. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, well, of course, the book goes over it in great detail, but
yes, it does.
Flow emotion, to flow emotion is not to tell a story and rehash it and feel the emotion, because really we're screwing ourselves deeper into the ground by doing that. So flow emotion really, it's a pointer to sitting quietly with an emotion and watching it with a silent mind. And if you try doing this, you'll notice that the sensation, the emotion, the feeling, you watch it as if you were watching a TV show or a movie. You notice that it rises to a peak, and it might feel a little intense for a moment, and then all of a sudden it releases and it starts to almost melt like an ice cube. And what that is it's emotion being acknowledged, which is really all it wants, and then it flies free. So all emotion that we don't do that with, again, I was never taught this. It would my whole life would be different. I wouldn't have dragged, so much through life had I been taught how to weed my own garden along the way, and that's what this is. So to flow emotion, sometimes this is the cause of being stuck in your life. You can't get past certain things because you never really allowed those emotions to flow. And that's what this is. You sit quietly with it. The emotion rises. It melts away. And there have been many times that I have felt like a ton of bricks was lifted off my chest. And then there are times that after you do this, all of a sudden something miraculous happens in your life, something that you didn't even expect. Like the emotion was waiting for you to, oh my God, she finally noticed us. But I get a chance to just, do my thing. It just rises and it goes away. So the key to this is, if you find yourself rehashing the story, you're making it worse for yourself. But if you can recognize the emotion and you can sit with it and ride it like a wave, it dissipates. And you will, the experience is undeniable. So, and it also jumpstarts a lot of great things in your life when just that one practice alone. The second practice, the U in fuel, is to accept unconditionally. And, my mind was one of those minds that said, accept something that I don't like. I don't think so. But that's the thing about acceptance. It's not acceptance like love. It's not love or acceptance unless it's unconditional, right? So that's real. So it's unconditional acceptance. It doesn't mean that you like the circumstance. It doesn't mean that you agree with the circumstance. You just recognize there it is. And we get stuck in resistance oh, I'm against this. I don't want it. I don't like it. Okay, but now you're stuck in that feel bad place. Unconditional acceptance, which is not a concept, it's an experience. While you understand the concept of accepting it unconditionally, to me, unconditional acceptance, it feels almost like a burning, right? Like the mind doesn't want to do it, but when I sit with the reality that there it is, so for me to deny it or be in resistance to it, I'm not in reality anymore. So unconditional acceptance really kicks the gate open to change in your life. And if it's something that you really don't want, it now frees you to get back in touch with your own power to actually do something about it and change it if you wanted to. But to stall out and in resistance, that puts everything about you on hold. So accepting unconditionally is really a very important part of it.
Yeah, and you also said, and I forgot to say this earlier, that fuel is like a living meditation.
It is a living meditation because it continues to put yourself back in the place where that you're witnessing thought instead of being had by it. And when you are in that place, you are now connected with higher intelligence, your guidance, your intuition, your higher self, God, the universe, source, whatever you call it. It's what's greater than the thinking mind. Now you're plugged in. And that's what it does. So it's 4 little perspectives. So the fuel, flow emotion, accept unconditionally. The E stands for being the eyewitness. Now, if a thinking mind is out there saying, oh, she doesn't know my schedule, I'm so busy, I don't have time for this. These are pocket-sized perspectives made to be weaved into your everyday life. It's for anyone, anywhere, anytime. That's what this is. That's why I call it a living meditation, because it's not knowledge that you collect and then go back to. It's perspectives that you practice in your everyday life. And if you just practice that one perspective of exercising that muscle that we never work, of being the eyewitness to thought, that one practice can change your whole life experience. Because once we practice noticing our own thought, we're going to start noticing limited beliefs, limited thinking, old programming that doesn't serve us. And we can discard that. And there's where free will really is powerful in our lives. And the last perspective is to exercise our lucidity. And what I mean by lucidity is to perceive your life without that constant mental commentary. If we notice, if we begin tomorrow, when you start your day, set the intention that you're going to notice the activity of your thinking mind. And I guarantee you will be surprised at how many ridiculous, sabotaging, untrue thoughts are actually tracing through your mind.
Yeah.
And so to practice lucidity is to really put yourself in a place of power that great ideas can pop in, solutions, because the mind is quiet enough to hear the greater intelligence that's right outside of it. So those 4 little perspectives, while they might sound complicated when I gave them to you all at once, it's really very simple. You can do it. Are you ever in an elevator? Do you ever stop at a red light? Do you ever use the bathroom? Do you ever wash your hands? I mean, these are tiny little things. They're baby steps. That's like putting stuff into your spiritual bank account. And the more you practice these tiny little baby steps in your life, they compound, they accrue, and then magic starts to happen. And really, in scientific terms, what you're actually doing is a metacognitive transformation. It's a deprogramming, a reprogramming, because thought, recognizing itself, is the prelude to that epiphany. The unlearned, deep-seated knowing that spontaneously rises from within, that thought is thought, but it is not self. So again, spiritual awakening is to experience the epiphany of the separation of thought and self. It's to go beyond that analytical understanding and realize that you are really the greater intelligence behind that. And of course, the 4 practices, I go into more detail. And I also in the book give 50 life experiences.
Yep. 50 Shades of Awakening.
Exactly. Anger, stress, relationships, gratitude, joy. And all of these things are looked at through the Fuel Your Life perspectives.
Exactly.
So in essence, I'm not asking anyone to believe what I'm saying, but I do invite everyone to try it for themselves. It's free to practice. They're tiny little baby steps that fit into our everyday lives, and we have nothing to lose except for what might be holding us back.
Exactly. And when the few minutes that we have left, and of course I was going to get into 50 Shades of Awakening, quickly, here's a quote that you have in your book. How can I wake myself up if I don't realize that I'm asleep?
And that is the million-dollar question.
Okay.
For anyone that is having this human experience, that is the million-dollar question. And the answer to that is, for me, are these 4 practices, these 4 perspectives that create metacognitive thinking, where that the program wakes up to itself and thought sees itself. This is what creates conscious expansion. This is the shift that you will experience in your life. And while the mind cannot do it, you can continue to put yourself back in the place that it will rise and meet you. And how do you do that? FUEL, by practicing those 4 perspectives in your everyday life, and watch the magic happen.
And we've been talking to Gina Charles. She's the author of Shift Happens and Fuel Your Life, a 4-point practice to spiritual awakening. You can get the books on Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble, Kubu. Am I saying this right? One Books and iTunes. I think I said.
iBooks. I think it's iBooks. Yeah.
iBooks. Okay. And GinaCharles.com. Please do that. And she has been with us for the hour, and it has gone by quickly. I recommend these books to you. It really will open your eyes to a lot of different things. There's a lot of wonderful information in both of these wonderful books. And again, I highly, highly, highly recommend them to you. Gina's just wonderful. Is there going to be a 3rd book coming soon?
Not soon, but I think maybe one day I will. I did start writing a 3rd book, and when I resonate with it, that's when I write, because I don't want it to come from reasoning. I want it to come from that greater place we just spoke about. And if I could, I just want to mention New World Living for everybody that is out there living their authentic lives. It is an e-commerce site that I created. There is a blog on there for transformation through self-empowerment, and it's at nwllifestyle.com, and also people can find me at GinaCharles.com. Both have newsletter subscriptions, and of course, New World Living and Gina Charles are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google, and Pinterest. There we go.
Absolutely. All right, young lady, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on The Express. And I just want to thank everybody out there who took the time to join us tonight. We're going to be back next week with an exciting show. No more weeks off. I'm afraid I'm going to be on every week. And anything you want to know, just go to GaryAllenTalkShow.com and you'll find it right there. And before I go too far, I just want to say again, it's been a great 6 years with UEW. And one more last thing, TMV Cafe. Donate $40 to the backpacks to help these young children get a good start in school. Go to tmvcafe.com and donate today. Spread the word. Go to tmvcafe.com and help these first graders get off to a great start in their school experience with the backpacks, and with the way finances are for a lot of people. We have a lot of young people out there who need some help. So thank you all very much for taking the time to join us. Gary Allen here with you on The Express. Until next week. Take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.